It's the good word.
Hello.
Yo.
I just got my dinner. Bradley is the good word, though.
Bradley?
He is.
I was gonna go with FH.
FH.
That's more like two letters.
What'd you think?
Yeah. The reading was what I expected.
Yeah?
Good. Yeah, I wasn't surprised. Um, in fact it was way more like what I don't know, I had expectations. I expected them to be not as right as they were. It was interesting. At least maybe I'm just shaping it how I'm wanting it, but it very much seemed like he was just taking Hegel and being like, "Hey, man, this shit has some problems. Here they are." And that was pretty much where we're at right now.
Aren't there Hegel's problems?
Yeah, he's taking like, Hegel's opinion on reality and appearance in reality was phenomenology, and he's just like, what about this, man?
Hmm.
What do we actually know based on that information? We've gone nowhere,
Hmm.
Sorry.
more or
What's
less
up?
what he's saying. Uh, I feel like not as certainly not as eloquently as Bradley has put it, but we've discussed these same ideas. We just didn't have the capability of putting it in such nice, clean, fucking short format.
Sure. So, I mean,
Let me turn you up.
I really
Don't get
don't
near the
think
mic,
actually Hegel
please.
held either of these positions, either the
No,
primary and secondary quality or the. Are you talking about the first two chapters? Or are you talking about the So like what?
he's not directly getting at Hegel, but it is definitely just thinking of him when he's speaking of these subjects. I don't know. It makes me think of it, I guess, I
Okay,
suppose.
I mean it's relevant, but I mean I think they're both two very materialist viewpoints that are dominant in Britain at the time, and he wants to, show that they're
But
really
yeah,
not
he
working.
supposes the two extremes, one being conservative theologian and the other being a hardcore materialist, right? Um, I think he believe that's in the introduction. He says, of course, that which is funny because he's in that era of Nietzsche. And he says, the only problem you could have is to think that you're better than either end of the spectrum,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which is funny because, essentially what he's saying is like, what the fuck is truth, right? Which is an interesting idea. Or why is one truth
Well,
more inherently more valuable than the other, or is one approach to life superior based on what, right?
mostly, I mean, he's making a defense of metaphysics because if you don't have metaphysics, then you turn into these like slavish dogmatisms that are either going to be
That's right.
theism or
Yep.
scientism.
Yep.
Uh,
He does say that.
and you want to be able to, I guess, because really, there's a lot of pitfalls in all of them. And the problem is if you're a slavish dogmatist.
That was more or less what I was thinking is like it doesn't matter which path you choose, whether it be, say, like his type of path of metaphysics or I guess if well, I guess he says the downside of taking the pure version of his path is just like I guess extreme skepticism, right? He's really at the same interesting point that like Nietzsche gets at, right? Is you're
Mm-hmm.
going to result in like before your transvaluation of values or just deciding based on some piece of information that something's going to have value. I mean, asking the right metaphysical questions is just going to merely give you more questions rather than answers.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
But it also keeps you like, I don't know, it keeps you away from really like stupidity at least. Like
mhm.
I was just watching this thing about whatever the Brazilian government and about how a bunch of people that are really for the current president
Sure, yeah.
and similar to Trump, where the people are like, clearly if he doesn't win, it was rigged, and there's a bunch of people lying.
Yeah, it was definitely true.
Yeah, that's definitely yeah, and people just have no idea. Like like they have never thought about what it means to know something because they just feel this way. They don't know that, and they don't know that they know
Yeah,
that. Now it's
of
possible
course.
that it's true, but that's not. You're not. You don't know that. Uh,
But, the veracity of that claim is based on very few, like, I suppose, well-considered relations
mm-hmm.
with substantive fact, right? I like his use of not say, because there's a big difference, right? He doesn't say noun and adjective. He says substantive and adjective, which I like.
Well, yeah, because well, so okay, yeah, so yeah, um, so the two materialisms were very interesting, and mostly because they seem very similar, and I was just starting to think about how to work them out and separate them, and why. On the one hand, he called one, he put one in the primary secondary qualities, and then put the other one in substantive adjective, and then why, his destruction of both of them happened in the sections that they did. Um, because in a lot of ways, like secondary qualities are just adjectives, and they seem to work, I guess, very similar to those.
That's how I'm imagining it as well, or understanding it. Yeah,
Yeah, because
primary is kind of like the thing in itself
well,
in a way,
I guess
not
I think of it.
exactly, but
So yes, okay, that is a difference. Yes, that is a weird thing. So in the primary and secondary qualities, we're dealing with types of qualities, whereas in the substantive adjective, we're dealing literally with substances and then adjectives, or things and adjectives.
that's correct.
Um, but so I guess the weird thing about this primary secondary is they don't actually get at the thing itself, because
Yes.
he ends up showing that like primary qualities, at least, well, he kind of glosses over it a little bit, but he mostly just is concerned with extension. Uh,
Extension is where you get meaning, which he's more or less using I guess, his own coining of like the idea of relation is what he's getting at. Uh, of course, that's not the same thing as relation, but it is a type of relation, right? Extension
yeah.
is like, well, there must be some type of right foundation. Like, well, is it a thing in itself? Let's just make it vague, right? Is there some substantive element you could say, and then it becomes well, see the funny words he's playing with, and it's a self-aware playing, right? Then you start using language, and you're like, well, it's an appearance. Well, it was an appearance of reality, or is it reality? It's just reality is an appearance of that. I just fuck. It's the primary, secondary quality, and then the aspect of extension making like the relation. It just becomes confounded very easily. Which, of course, these are just the problems that he's intending to bend my mind with and not provide answers at this point.
Oh yeah, that's a big. And now that I've read the first two chapters, I expect. I'm very
You
positive.
read chapter 1 and 2, right? That's where we're at.
Yeah, I read
Okay, yeah, that's where I'm at.
the preface introduction, and
So
then
easy to read, man. It took me like 35 minutes.
oh my god, dude,
Oh
it's
my God.
beautiful. It's so good. He tells you what he's talking about, and then
I had to
talks about it.
reread two different pages just because I just zoned out and was thinking about something else and just had to reread it. That was the only reason. It's
Yeah,
like, oh,
yeah. So the thing about the primary secondary quality thing was just saying that it was well. What I really liked about it is that he showed that the concept, at least as of extension being a primary quality, is a bunch of not like, as opposed to it not being a secondary quality, was that it's a bunch of nonsense.
what
Uh,
A and B, and then you introduce C to explain it, and then there's D to explain the C, to the A to the B, and then the E, and then
well,
it's an
what?
infinite.
Oh yeah, well that was in the adjective, subject adjective thing,
Sure.
subject adjective one. Which I thought was okay. So I remember when we were reading like the SCP or whatever. I remember it saying that Bradley whatever argued that relations aren't real because anything that is related has to be related to its terms, and that's an infinite regress. But unless it brings it up somewhere else, that's not actually what he's saying. He's not saying relations aren't real. He's just saying that
Well,
relations aren't a
if
way of
if you
grounding
remember his introduction, right? He warns you.
of what.
Well, it's not necessarily directly pertaining to what you're saying, is that people are going to read what I have written here and be like, oh, well, he's being dogmatic. And he's like, well, I'm just presenting an idea. It doesn't mean I believe it's an absolute truth or anything of the sort. It's just the exercise of this book more than anything is an exercise in thinking, right? Like, like he said, it's just like it keeps you from being stupid is the aspect of his
Mm-hmm.
like element of his metaphysics is
Yes.
it requires thoughtfulness. You can't just rely on dogma, and if you do, you're really shortchanging what he's trying to get at.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like when you say or you're like moving over, you're like, well, actually, that's in the substantive and adjective, and it's like, well, weirdly enough, you can kind of just take what he said in that one in that chapter two and just kind of apply it to chapter one in a
Oh yeah,
very
and
direct
that's
way. Like he could have easily just said it about that, which is odd
oh
because
yeah,
it is different, but it's the same. Like he also talks about it. It's very meta.
oh yeah, yeah, because you can talk about how excuse me, in what way God damn it, in what ways does the object have its primary qualities and does it have its secondary qualities?
This is
Well,
where Hegel comes in my mind. We're getting closer to what I'm getting at, or I was getting at
uh,
earlier, is it's his negativity in relationships, like things disappearing into one another.
mm-hmm,
Um, in that aspect of the dialectic, which of course is incredibly crucial to understanding Hegel. Um, Bradley's absolutely that's what he's talking about. I mean, of course, it's a bit of a stretch, I suppose, on my part to be like, oh, he's talking about the Hegelian dialectic, but because there's other people who had similar sets of ideas, and Bradley's own overlap a good bit. It's just, that's what we've been reading, so
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
that's what comes to mind. And that's the big one. Is he's talking about negative. He's just using his own terms, right? He's trying not to be overly technical. He's very straightforward, which is nice.
yes,
But you could swap a lot of these. You could swap a lot of what he's talking about into Hegelian terms, um, which is very interesting.
like what do you mean?
Well, he speaks a bit about essentially just, I mean, the big one's just negatives and things disappearing into them and things in themselves and their inessential characteristics. I mean, he's talking about all those things. Like he's kind of jumping quite a wide breadth of the distance of the phenomenology in terms of its length and like the different topics covered.
Mm-hmm,
He touches on a lot of things, like he's touching on like the first third of the book in the second third. He doesn't get to say the third of the phenomenology of spirit so much.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, he's just getting some core. I mean, if you're going to engage in metaphysics after Hegel, there's no fucking way. It's kind of redundant what I'm saying. You can't possibly not engage with Hegel, um, because if you create, I mean, you just can't, right? Because he's created a way of thinking about the world,
mm-hmm,
and once you read it, I mean, there's just some fundamental truth about what Hegel is saying. Um, you can't get around that. Not to say that there aren't like glaring holes in like the comprehensiveness in it, and that's really Bradley's point, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I
So
don't know. I'm going to be aggressively searching for all connections to Hegel as we read through this, because my greatest interest in doing this is to see why he's wrong.
he being Bradley or
Quit
Hegel?
comparing me to your ex-girlfriend.
I'm speaking of Hegel in this
I'm a
sense.
new
Yeah.
girl.
Um,
That's what I was. That was the. Never mind.
So
Hegel was the old. Yeah.
He's
old
an old
girlfriend.
girlfriend,
That was last year.
old girlfriend, good girlfriend.
So yeah, so now that I'm reading this, I'm now thinking I'm more annoyed at Hegel than I was, not just because he writes like a dumbass, but because he doesn't
Hmm.
tell you when he's talking about somebody else and that he's going to attack it. He just jumps in saying,
Yep.
"Here's a thought," and then you don't really know how much of it he's gonna keep with and how much of he's gonna not keep with. Bradley tells you straight up, he's like, there is the theory of primary and secondary qualities, and you should probably be familiar with it. It's been around for a long
Yeah.
time. I'm going to show you that it's a bunch of nonsense. Or that it's just
Yeah, he
nonsense.
also introduced what that concept was, so you didn't have to go read a bunch of fucking
Yes,
books.
yes, yes.
And I was like, oh, it took me, I had to reread a page once, and I was like,
Yeah,
oh, I see exactly what he's getting at.
it was like a
Yes.
paragraph of him explaining what the
Yep.
primary and
That
secondary
was
quality
it.
was.
It's not fucking groundbreaking. Now, what you can say about that concept could be groundbreaking, but the
Mm-hmm.
concept itself is intuitively understood by literally anyone who's just slightly above retarded. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's fucking obvious.
Um, yeah, so, hold up.
Oh, he also had this very interesting, this is more of just a fun thing of reading. What was it? Oh man, I'll have to pull it up. Let's see
About
if
the mistress?
let's see. Mistress.
A mistress isn't charming when she's not around you. No, she.
Oh, that was a good one too. I wasn't thinking of that one.
Yeah,
That one's fucking good, that
yeah.
example.
So yeah, that was a good. So that was when he was talking about like the. So the charming is akin to a secondary quality, as in it's something that in the primary secondary quality way of thinking, you only have that secondary quality in relation to another thing. So you, in a lot of ways, you can really only be charming to another person. So you have to have that other person, and also you only see the charmingness of your girlfriend when you're with her. But it really misses over like what it means for her to be charming, because she can still be charming when she's just alone in a room. Like she still continues to be
And
that, because you can.
that doesn't like reek of Hegel to you?
Uh, I mean, not entirely. I mean, to some extent, yes. I mean, it depends. So, problem is, as I started thinking of that in terms of capacities. So now you can start trying to say, oh, we have these primary static qualities.
Oh,
That
damn, John,
you
you build a new
you
dialectic?
have the
I haven't gotten there, man.
you have the capacity to be blue or to be yellow or smelly. Um,
Okay.
and that's your primary quality. But being actually blue or smelly is
Okay. I see what you're saying.
I don't know. I don't know. I just started
No,
putting
I
that.
like that. Yeah, that is what you're creating some language around what he's saying, and it is you're making a distinction that matters here. Yeah.
Yeah. Um.
Capacity and being, right? And so you're essentially bringing it we maybe understand each other, or make sure I do understand you. Is like capacity is like a set of inessential characteristics, or you start getting into like the secondary qualities, and then primary would be more of the being aspect of like what is it, right? The is like what
Actually, I was going.
I don't know.
No,
It's
I was actually
how you
going.
can flip it though.
Well, no, I was going in the direction that the capacities are the essential components of the thing itself, and that you have like the ball as being seen by a person is blue,
We'll
and so
see
now
the
you have the
that
aspect of as, because you can be different properties at the same time
okay.
of being the same thing. You can even have
I
opposing
see.
properties at different times as long as you are as a certain
Yeah.
thing.
I got you. Yeah, I was just using inessential in like the Hegelian way, which doesn't clash with what you're saying. What you're saying makes sense
Okay, yeah.
because you're bringing into an observer in this case. And the inessential characteristic, of course, is like an artificial separation of the fact that something is without an observer, which of course is contradictory. But nonetheless, it's like, yes, someone would say that it does have qualities, right? Oh, then he plays with has and fucking is and spatial relationships. God damn it, fucking Bradley.
Oh yeah, yeah. The
Oh,
has, so like
fuck.
having. Oh yeah, so that was a fun little switch where he's talking about like in what way are the terms of a relation. Like does the object or the thing, the term a, have, or like, so you can say like a is being related to b. Uh,
Yeah.
but then if you want to try to make that like that is what that thing is, then you have to be able to say that being in relationship with B is A, which is weird to say. Very strange to say, and I like to think about it, I guess in a particular thing. So I am in front of my desk, and
True.
and we were saying that right now here, but it's not the case that being in front of my desk is me. It
Yeah,
definitely doesn't, like,
sure.
on the one hand,
You
that's
don't mean that.
contingent. I'm not always in front of my desk, and there's other things that could be in front of my desk, and also being in front of my desk doesn't exhaust all of what I am. Um,
Yep.
and so then he goes to say that you can't just say that a relation is a simple adjective of a substance or a substantive, and then
You also just weirdly can't say that like it's or you just gets into like the fucking games of playing around with his idea of like sugar, which is the same.
oh yeah, it's the same way Hegel used.
I was gonna say, I mean, first of all, that's the exact same example
Uh
Hegel
huh.
uses.
Uh huh.
And that had to be intentional.
Oh
Fucking
yeah.
no way.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's just like the funny aspect of just like, yeah, he just like essentially walks you through Hegel's discussion, right? In much quicker than Hegel of like, okay, this is what Hegel means, right? When he talks about it, and he's like, but we're not really saying anything here, right?
Yeah, nothing important about
It's
there
like,
being like
yeah,
the.
it's like, what if have we said anything meaningful, I guess, in Hegel's own criticism of himself? He should
Mhm.
be asking, like, what's the real content here? And we don't have anything.
Yeah, about like, so you have your different you have your different qualities, but it's not merely just the the severally
Yeah.
connected properties. There's something that is more than just that. There's like
Yeah,
even
and
more than
Hegel
that.
would just do some hand waving. He would just say, negativity vanishes into the self, comes back out.
Yeah.
It's just relationships, man. It's like, well, the relationships aren't the things either. He's just like, well, you shake your fucking head.
Yes. So yeah. So it seems like, yeah, Bradley is doing this thing where Hegel does I guess the destruction of what the original thoughts were, and then instead of what Hegel does, where Hegel just goes like, I'm gonna give you a kind of magical answer to this,
Yeah,
and we're gonna move on. Bradley's like,
very idealist.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Bradley's gonna go. I don't really. It's just I don't have an. I
He's
don't,
like, I don't know.
yeah, we don't have an answer yet. We're gonna deal with that later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The idea that you don't know, that's a crazy difference from Hegel. Hegel's a fucking asshole. He's just like, well, maybe I'm not telling you yet, right? And in Bradley, especially like the introduction, he's just like, well, maybe we'll find out, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Maybe I'm
Or,
just.
or my favorite, he's like, oh, I totally believe we can know things absolutely, but maybe not really anything about the absolute.
Uh-huh.
That we have a notion of it. We have some level of knowledge, but probably it could be so incomplete that it's really senseless.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, so what does that mean? You're like, what the fuck does that mean? Is the start? It's like, yeah, we could know, we definitely know this. But do we really know anything about it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, all right, you fucking, I think you've lost it, but
Yeah.
or not. You're the most sane person alive, but you should be emotionally very upset by that prospect,
Yeah. Well, I
right?
think. Yeah. So the yeah. So okay. Well,
That's
this
the
is.
emotional to thought, right? Is and then that's also some Nietzsche there. He'd just be like, I don't think most people, like Bradley speaking, I don't think most people should pursue metaphysics. It's going to be very
Yeah. Yeah.
emotionally upsetting.
It is. It is.
Instead, just stick to the dogma. But those who are not contented by, the glaring, contradictions that they find in life, they're
Uh
going to
huh.
start asking the questions, and albeit their satisfaction might be in the incoherence of the world.
Yes, and also that they have the freedom to question the inconsistencies and see how to
Yeah.
and look beyond them, and not be like forced to fit into these weird systems.
It's almost like the certainty that you have the ability to ask the question is your freedom and your certainty, which is weird. Like your comfort is the lack of comfort that, or I guess it's the process,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's your comfort.
of searching through the
You're not
uncertainty.
going to get the result. You may even be firmly, your greatest belief might be that it isn't there
That's
to be
very
found, right?
yes, and that the certainty is like a I guess a I guess it's on another.
It's
It's
the Nietzschean paradox, right? Is like the most thing I'm most certain about is that, yeah, or I should always be skeptical about everything. And, there is no grand truth, right? And you're just positing that as a truth. You're like,
hmm
that's my grand truth. There isn't one. And it's like, well, that's a problem.
well. I mean, well, because I guess it depends on the. Well, it's kind of on a different scope or level of what most people
It
want to say
is. It
about
is
what
a different
absolute
scope,
truths.
though.
Yeah, because most people, absolute truth, they want to be like, this is the way things are, and it is consistent throughout time. The thing,
Yeah. I see what you're getting at. You're
I mean,
absolutely right. It's still funny that you ultimately end up at the same kind of fundamental
it's very
issue.
similar, but I guess what I want to say is it's like lower down on the derivatives. You know, like derivatives, like you have like your position, you
Oh,
have
you're definitely
your
right about that.
velocity, and you have your acceleration, and whatever is.
You get down to a constant if you keep
Yeah,
fucking
but like,
breaking it down.
like yeah, it just depends on what level are you sitting at a constant. So like most people they have their position on time, and that's all they're really concerned about, and they want to say
Yeah.
like, oh, this is the velocity is constant, and that's what we're dealing with. But I guess what it's analogously here what we're talking about is that it's not the velocity that's actually constant. It's the acceleration. The velocity can change over time. Although to be honest, actually, I would have
And
to
then you
even
can
say
keep
it's
so you
going to
can
be
keep
lower than
moving.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Your analogy is perfect though. I see what you mean.
There's only one constant. And that's, you know how I know you're gay?
Because I constantly suck cocks. With certainty.
Constant.
With
Constantly.
certainty.
With certainty.
I suck cock with certainty. There is no question in my
It's a
mind.
constant. Cocksucking
Yeah.
is a constant
It
for JV.
is all the time, dude.
Oh
I
my
can't
God.
breathe unless I can't breathe.
That's good.
Oh, that
That's
was a
good.
fucking beautiful. Put that on the inside sleeve of your next book. A novel by J.P. Cocksucker.
I should have gone on fucking Michael Foucault's cover.
He writes in I don't know if it feels like sophistry. Like I don't mean that in the negative way, but I feel like he's got like one hand up, kind of like directing a play. as
Yeah,
he's
he's
writing.
got the self-awareness it's like I was getting on the introduction, and it's just like, I'm saying, given it's almost like given the nature of language, right? Is you're going to say things, and it's almost like you're like definitively this is the truth, right? And then he really means some type of gradation in between, which leads to this sensation of like where he's almost seemingly contradicting himself, right? He's just moving around. He's considering different ideas, and it gives this impression of like, because I don't know, everyone's like this. People want certainty, and so you have this feeling of like you're being manipulated whenever you have this someone like Bradley in the way he's speaking,
Hmm.
which is where that sophistry type element comes from.
I
But
did
of
like
course, it's weird, right? Because he's doing the opposite, because he doesn't want you to do what would have the tendency to do.
Hmm.
It's interesting.
I liked and obviously satisfactory knowledge is not possible, simple, but I wondered about the part where he talks about the prejudices against the philosopher in the introduction.
Hmm.
Um, was that a temporal thing of that
Like
time?
historical? No, I think
No.
no, I think I mean I think it comes and goes culturally, but yeah, like saying
For
how
sure.
metaphysics is a bunch of nonsense. It doesn't help anybody. I'm trying to think. So I guess.
I've heard lots of people say that in my life, so it's
Oh
certainly
yeah,
not very
like
temporal.
what? There was three things he said that most people had an argument against metaphysics.
Yeah.
So I read the introduction and the preface like 2 weeks ago, and then I read the actual reading things this week, and I reread the second chapter.
The substantive elements are definitely the first two chapters.
Yeah, I mean that's where he's actually getting into philosophy. But I do want to revisit the. I did want to revisit the.
The intro's fun. Yeah.
It is very fun.
Yeah.
It is very fun. I definitely liked it. So let me see here.
The philosopher, he is confronted by prejudices hostile to his study, and he is tempted to lean on those prejudices within him, around him, which seems contrary to the first.
Yeah, I don't know if we're reading the same one.
That's the
I don't
first
know.
line of the.
Any
Introduction.
Any such
Yeah.
pursuit will encounter a
Let's
number
see.
of objections. It will have to hear that the knowledge which is
I see.
desired is attained.
Oh, this
To
is the
obtain-
fucking second edition. I read both. Wow.
Okay, well, yeah,
Retarded.
there's the. So I also have the second. So the preface is pretty. The second edition preface is pretty short.
Yeah, it is.
Um,
I read the. Apparently, I didn't know this. I read the first edition the first time. Second.
They're gonna be very similar, especially like at this stage of the book. I don't know.
oh,
I don't
so
think it's
yeah,
gonna matter
okay.
which version you read.
No, I don't
Well,
actually
you
think it
made me
matters.
all self-conscious.
So I looked at the page numbers and stuff. So the PDF we found was the first edition print, right? I think
Which PDF?
the one from LibGen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking at then. Okay.
And I believe that's a first edition.
Okay.
But
Yeah, we can stick with first though.
and I bought a physical book from Muirhead Library.
You didn't get the first edition.
No.
You piece of shit, John.
Yeah. Well, the guy didn't respond.
I was so excited to just look at it and
Well,
hold it
okay.
and read a few pages.
But he did get early 20th
You-
century drool from someone who fell asleep on page 500. So
Yeah.
Courtney is apparently maybe gonna buy it for me.
Well, that'd be
is she
cool.
gonna join us? By the way, I meant to ask. She should join us.
I think come and go she will.
More relevant to what she may be very interested in. I know you brought it up is the fucking early theological writings of Hegel. I think she would thoroughly like that.
Yes, does that? I think the other thing I suggested is the ethical writings because those are very easy for her. Like not for her, but like just for anybody who's not, keeping up with it week to week to just be like, oh, this week I can do it. Let me do it this time, and
Yeah.
then put it down and not do it for another 5 weeks or something.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean it's gonna
I was just curious. Let's see.
and also like this month is like the end of the fiscal year for her, so like it's been kind of like
Oh, baby.
yeah.
That's fun.
Oh, that's fucking not fun.
Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe it is, but
It's stressful. Yes.
Yeah,
So it
that's
is.
that's the best
It will.
word.
It will be fun. When the catharsis hits. Yeah. Anyway,
There's no sin, however, prone it to it the philosopher may be, which philosophy can justify. So little as spiritual pride.
Oh yeah, obviously I don't think he had any idea of Nietzsche, but it's a funny fucking slight there. Of course, that could be true of fucking Kant and Hegel as well as just being so incredibly arrogant in the way you present your system of just being like, this is the truth.
I think you have to be, I've found. I don't, I think,
You think so? Bradley doesn't seem to be that way so far, at least.
you have to be what?
but he doesn't have, would you say he has a system or
Oh,
But Nietzsche
an
doesn't have a
observation?
system either, but he's extremely prideful.
Bradley is explicit.
It's,
This is not a systematic philosophy.
what is it? It's not required, but it's not sufficient, but it's not necessary, but it's sufficient.
Yeah, well, I know what you're saying. So
Yeah.
is it what would it really mean to say I have a system that explains all? Not like I guess the point being is that it's a ridiculous thing to say. All right, it's that I've created a system that encompasses all knowledge and ways of thinking, and it's like
Well,
how is
well,
I
okay,
don't know.
well.
That's a
So
different
Don't get
the thing
question.
about
defensive
creating a
just
system.
because you have a philosophy, John. We know you're. We're gonna buy your book.
Well, okay, So no, okay. What I want to get to is you can come up with a system, and then there's also whether you actually. So a system, like I think I've talked about this. You can have a nonsense system, which is that Barney is the deliverer of truth. You know, something like that.
Well, he is, but
And
yes.
he is
Yeah.
he is the creator of all things.
Beside that fact
I
that
mean,
it's
I
a
mean, it's
fact. Go
just as
on.
valid as what most, a good portion of the world believes.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. What I mean to say
I'll
is
go with it.
you have some conglomeration of essential thoughts that lets you say something about how all things work or are.
Sure.
And to some degree or another, yes. And then you have principles about systems like, oh, should it be consistent or not? How do you deal with inconsistent? Like, what's going on with that?
I'm
And
sorry, my eternal skepticism is showing.
so like, you know, I guess maybe in a Hegel way. Oh, if we come up across inconsistencies, we can try to resolve them. We don't have to throw the whole system out.
This is the introduction, what you're doing right now, which is telling us that you can be humble.
Yeah. Yes.
And
but what I
which
guess,
is what someone who was trying to get us to drink the Kool-Aid at the
Damn
Jonestown
right.
would say.
I'm ready to drink
And
it.
I would drink your Kool-Aid, John.
Oh, thank you.
I have my mouth wide open and I'm gargling fucking Bradley's Kool-Aid. I'm just ready for him to pour it down my throat.
Drink it.
I did it to Hegel. I'll do it to Bradley. Just
Yes.
open up wide.
Sip, sip.
Fucking glug glug, baby. No sipping.
Gargle it.
Yeah.
Show it to the camera.
It's fucking gone wild here. Boys gone wild. Glug glug, Bradley.
Yeah, but he does deal with first principles in philosophy, so he's gonna deal with a lot of like
Yeah.
the different ways of the first principles, which are really like the kind of like those first things that people will start a system with that then let them say something about the rest of the world.
Yeah. He said some very like Greek-esque feeling stuff, like man just has a natural tendency, regardless of how retarded he is, to just reflect on the world.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's just like
Yeah.
what makes you who you are, right? That's a very fundamental tenet, which
I
I
would
like.
love just a fucking modern day insult like this, like, philosophers of, previous era were fucking spaz as fuck. You're just like, whoa, Bradley,
This is a hot take.
hot take.
Oh, I forgot. I'm supposed to talk like this now.
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
We wouldn't want you to be upset by the slight nasally nature of your voice.
Yes, I don't want to be upset.
Yeah, we don't want you to be upset about that.
We'll have to hear that. So this is the end of the first paragraph of the introduction. It will have.
I'm definitely gonna ruin a girl's future orgasm soon with that.
I'm trying to keep a character, okay?
He can hold it through the laugh, which is,
you gotta shove it down, dude. You gotta.
yeah.
Yeah.
I can't do
Anyway,
it.
it will have to hear that the knowledge which philosophy or metaphysics, desires to obtain is impossible altogether. That's the first objection to metaphysics. Or, if possible, in some degree,
second
is practically useless.
Hold on,
So
dude.
unobtained, practically useless,
Okay.
and that all events we can know nothing beyond the old philosophy. So we could say either anything we could say is impossible, or it's useless, or it's nothing new.
So
Okay.
you're saying that it's a matter of just a dismissal of ideas?
Yes.
Like you just take the fundamental premises and you just simply dismiss them.
Yes. Before
Is
you even
is
have
that
the
what you're
conversation.
saying? Yes.
Yes.
What the fuck are
It's
you
the
guys talking about?
dogmatic approach, right?
What am I
Is that
talking about?
instead of engaging in a meaningful argument, you just
Oh,
dismiss it at its
yeah.
start, right?
And that itself is a metaphysical position. So
I know,
you've already
that's what
stepped
he's
into the
saying.
metaphysics.
Yes.
Fucking
Just
wow.
like what I was saying before, man. Is that if you're like, you can only have my greatest truth, right? Is that there really isn't a great sense of truth in the world. You should always be skeptical,
Mm-hmm.
but you've
Hey,
fallen into your own
who?
metaphysical trap.
Well, just like your
What do you
opinion,
have to
man.
say then?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that
Stop. Can we?
I've
Can we?
said
All right. Stop. Please
I
stop.
can do this all night.
uh,
It doesn't
fucking.
affect my ability to think.
He just keeps.
But on the topic of what we're getting at, I think that everything that I've really had to say about this has been said.
You know it'll stick if you do it too long.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I think that I've addressed all the important ideas that I got out of this from reading it.
Yeah. It's pretty straightforward.
Nothing. Yeah, it's straightforward and
Okay.
yeah. I mean, we're just waiting, right? Here's some thoughts to put in your head, problems I'm not solving, and now he's gonna just kind of present them.
I did.
I mean, we could go about trying to make an attempt at resolving one of
I
these
was
problems, right?
worried
We could do
that
that.
there was more there, but on the second read, I think that's a fair summary. That it's just here are some
Yeah.
Yeah.
open-ended,
Yep.
kind of like an open letter. Just here's some thoughts about
Were
a
you
couple
reading it
things.
sweat and you're like, man, he's solving something
Well,
here. I don't know
I
what it
can't
is yet.
go through my third book of between Kant.
Yeah,
No,
this is much
fourth or
more friendly,
fifth
man.
now. I can't go through like my fifth fucking like y'all's pick, and just looking at the pages and just nothing is landing. You
No,
know.
this is I don't think this one will be like that at all.
Well, yeah, because some of it landed, but I'm like he's not
Yeah.
positing
Yeah. Like you're
like
waiting
Oh,
for it.
a
definitely
full
not.
circle or really
Well, he did
um
posit one full circle, but he wasn't really pausing, he was bringing it up.
Which was what?
He was one of the full circles we already spoken about, like, the absurdity of like trying to find relations in the meaning of the characteristics and the qualities. Rather, it's one of
Oh
the.
well, that was more
Yeah.
destructive. It wasn't like
I know he wasn't actually
positive
positing anything. My point, it was,
because he
yeah,
wasn't
he was
positively
negating
saying
the
that there
point
are no
being said.
relations. He was just saying that relations aren't a good way to ground
I know.
adjectives into substances or subjects.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
ooh
Yeah.
uh
Um. But.
But
Okay. So. We get. I guess if we do the next two chapters, that's about 20 pages.
okay. I mean, I'm just trying to think like as an exercise what we could do, which would be incredible if we could have any success at it. Is I mean, we could take one of these problems that he's presenting and make an attempt at
Well, so
how does one go about resolving it, right?
So you want to try to save the original positions?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Or imagine where he's going, right?
Right. Yeah. So I guess I already sort of had a partial answer to the primary secondary quality, which is that you make all the primary you make your primary qualities just capacities of having the secondary quality. And you don't have to be in relation to have those capacities. You just posit.
But how could you possibly have the capacity of having without having a relation with it?
So like I have a gun and I have a possibility of shooting myself, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna do it, or that I will, or that
But
that capacity necessitates that it at some point is actualized.
that capacity necessitates actualization. Okay, so
I'm saying
that's your.
I'm saying that's not the case. You can have a capacity,
Okay,
yeah, without ever
okay.
actualizing the capacity.
Interesting, interesting. But that's just more like separating by degree. It's like just a matter of degrees of separation. Is what you're getting at. Is like
Uh,
the event itself is separated from the relation that it stems from. Because
mm,
it's not a certainty, it's not something we would necessarily immediately describe as a relation, but nonetheless we could deduce it or
well,
have some type of reasoning process that would lead us to think, right, from other relationships that say if you own a gun, say for example, common statistics, which is why you would think of it, is that you would be more likely to shoot yourself because well you for one you have something that you can shoot yourself with, and if you didn't you couldn't, right?
right, right. And then even if I didn't have one, I still have the capacity to shoot myself. But that's kind of beside the point.
That's an interesting point. Yeah,
But
that's true.
all I want to say is that your primary qualities are just capacities. There's not any actual static salient properties. Even extension, I
Mm,
guess, which is a strange thing to say.
salient.
And so
Um,
I'm just trying to break that down. What in this scenario that you're proposing would be the, I guess, primary quality,
the capacity to be tan, or I guess
or the gun example is the one I was just
the
going to use it because you're
capacity,
already using it.
yeah, to shoot myself, or which I get the problem with shooting yourself is it's kind of in a complex property, which I don't even know if you really want to say that it's a property, but like being so if we want to kind of get to the simpler ones, the like the being such and such weight, or being a certain color, uh, or if we would even skip people and just deal with rocks, like the rock has a capacity to be gray, whether it's in the dark or not. And even in the light, it has the capacity to be dark and to be unseen. Um, and so you can even have capacities that are contradicting, but they adhere in the same thing. So like the thing has the capacity to be large, which is very relationally dependent, but it also has the possibility of being small, and it really depends on what's going on. The other annoying. Okay, well now there's another aspect to this. So I'm just gonna riff a little bit. Was the dependency upon an observer, where like determining whether something is large or small depending on
Yeah,
what.
is it meaningful without your observer, right?
Yeah, yeah, and so I guess the capacity to be gray, you don't need an observer to be there to see its grayness to make it so that it is gray, or that it has the capacity to be gray. Whereas
I
something
mean,
like
I suppose my objection would stay the same. It's just a matter of degrees of separation in which you're deriving the relationship.
so under what relation is required for there to be a capacity to be gray?
A capacity to be gray. What or what relationship? Well, first of all, for something to be gray, I mean, I would propose that someone would have to perceive it as gray.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. And so to be so I'm just trying to, yeah. So then I'm trying to remove it. So yeah, to be gray, you have to have somebody seeing the rock be gray, and then now that's trying to be the secondary quality. And then now I'm gonna push it back and say, oh, it's just the capacity to be gray. And so now my question is do you have to have
I see what you're
an
saying. Yeah,
observer to observe that it has the capacity to be gray for it to have the capacity to be gray?
I see what you're saying. That is an interesting abstraction you could make. I see. Okay. So if it has the capacity to be gray, but it isn't necessarily gray because you're speaking of a hypothetical object,
Mm-hmm.
but nonetheless that's based off of an observation of, well, probably a gray rock. Uh,
Sure, sure.
or the concept of gray and the concept of rock. However, you may have never seen an actual gray rock, right? Then you're really asking a question of like, the unicorn, right? Something that, characteristics like a horse and a rhino or a series of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to make an amalgamation of things that doesn't say exist to be viewed,
Mm-hmm.
outside of say a pictorial representation, but nonetheless it is an idea. But it's always just seems that like you're creating something out of just a set of relationships of things that you can experience. I don't know. It is different, a different point, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
not wrong.
And
I don't know if it truly gets at something. It does get at something new. I just don't know if it solves the problem in an interesting
so
direction.
I now have a weird thought, which is that the capacity to be gray requires the capacity to be perceived,
That's kind of what I was, yeah,
which is
that's what I was
a
thinking.
weird. Yeah, which is I thought that's kind of what you're getting at. Um,
Yeah,
which
it
is
gives
not
that
actually.
recursive feel.
It doesn't actually require an actual relation. Just requires the possibility or the capacity of something else to perceive it. So
Yeah.
I guess if there didn't exist anything else, then there wouldn't be the capacity. If there were no observers, then there wouldn't be the capacity to observe, and therefore it would no longer retain its capacity to
Well,
be
this
gray.
is like the conversation of how it's Sasha is. I remember we were listening to Destiny and Perspective Philosophy, and it was just like, you're talking about like the meanings of words, and like it's like someone being, I think it was in the gender discussion, right? It's like, oh, well, we're just going to start ascribing new meanings to words, and it's like, well, if that no one actually corresponds those two concepts in a way that's meaningful, you don't really have any meaning there. You haven't really done anything. It's just out in the wind. It needs correspondence. It needs meaning.
To map onto something in the
You have
world.
to be
It's
able to
like if
map
you
it to
go up,
something to the world. Okay.
if you go to, I think the example was from Rem, was if you go to the zoo and see a zebra and go, look at that beautiful girl, you're not being a good interlocutor. You're not mapping onto the other person's. They're just gonna look at you like you're a fucking crazy person. And then
'Cause you are.
obviously, if someone says they're or they identify from the first person as whatever attack helicopter, you say, well, are you made of metal? Um,
Yeah, you
you know,
make the associations, right? Hmm.
Do I have the capacity to fly though? Because
Yeah.
it's conceivable.
well, One Direction.
Yeah, you're gonna fly in like 2 weeks.
Can fly straight down.
Um, oh, I don't want to derail it. You
You
brought
can
something
fly as an
interesting to
extension
mind.
to yourself. Get in the plane.
Early, yeah,
Go ahead, Sasha.
what part? No, he had mentioned earlier about Brazil, John.
Yep.
Um, at the end of this, I was gonna send the paper on it, but it's there's just I found the 5 minute video at the end of this. We'll watch if we want. The corruption for the oil construction, pretty wild.
In Brazil.
Yeah, if you haven't already seen what happened with that,
I've
I
not.
guess it
All
was
I
the
did
biggest.
was watch John Oliver while I sort of ate dinner, or mostly waited in anxiety for my dinner.
Yeah, I think it's regarding that same topic.
Sure
You're
it is.
talking about the.
Bolsonaro, whatever his name is.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that the population of Brazil is more than Russia?
Yeah. Weirdly enough.
Yeah, they fuck like kids. It's cold over in Russia. They're fucking atheists, probably.
It sounds like some fucking Lebowski shit.
Oh, and I sent the
They're
ethics paper.
nihilists. Don't worry about them.
I don't know if you guys are up for like Friday or something.
What's on Friday?
Um,
Sorry, I was looking.
like the ethics.
Ethics.
Be down for Thursday.
More likely I could do Thursday. Yeah.
Okay. It's first steps towards an ethics of robotics and AI. I was like, that sounds fucking cool.
Sounds good.
I think we've argued about this a couple times.
Yeah, we've
First
talked about it.
steps towards.
Sounds good.
Hold up. Oxford Journal.
I just DM'd it to you.
Oh.
I'm super curious of whether Bradley actually extricates himself from these issues he's addressing, or if he's merely just going to expound on the complexity therein in the course of this book.
Uh.
And I think the answer is the latter.
Wait. What? That he's gonna only.
Expound and like maybe find some truths in that, but I don't think he's going to come to. I mean, it was very. The reason why I say this is that he says, "Oh, I believe we can know absolute knowledge," but that knowledge is so incomplete. Then what is to say about it, right? Um,
Yeah. I
I
think
think his claims are going to be very weak compared to say like Hegel, right?
Well. They might be. As arguable as Hegel. He just won't spend as much time arguing about it. Mostly,
Sure.
I'm expecting him to be like, "Here's a possible solution. Cool," and then it's gonna be it.
Yeah, sounds about right. I am curious as to what he comes up with.
Yes. I do expect that we will get a huge overview of, I guess, 19th century philosophy in the first half of this book of that is
Yeah,
Ep6.
but first volume.
Yeah. Um,
Because I know the majority of his philosophy is really in the second volume.
yes.
The first volume is merely exposition.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm.
So,
Come bean with me.
are we beaning?
I've been beaning.
All right. I'm gonna cut this off now. Bye, internet.